I paid $1,000 for this wrecked Diavel V4 so you wouldn't have to. You're welcome. Alright, so last time we were here, we removed the whole front suspension of the motorcycle, got both the forks out, removed everything attached to them, front brakes, speed sensors, got those hanging up there, but we didn't dig much further than that. And so what I would like to do now is start digging my way backwards through the motorcycle, headlight, radiators, oil coolers if I can, and everything in between. So everything must go. So before we start digging too much into the motorcycle, let's talk about how much it's cost so far. Now again, brand new, this motorcycle would cost between $24,000 and $32,000 depending on your accessories, but that's way too much money for me. I got this motorcycle off of Copart, which is an auction site where you can buy wrecked vehicles just like this. And the way that it works is you put in a bid and you bid against any other person who's willing to bid on the motorcycle in the entire world. For me, it was me versus nobody. And so my initial bid of $4,600 was the winning bid. And so that's what I got this motorcycle for. After taxes, that number crept up to around $6,200. But even at $6,200, this motorcycle is a steal of a deal in my opinion. So far, getting it home has cost another $750 with shipping. And so all in to get it to this house, we have spent just under $7,000, which to me is fantastic. If I can build this motorcycle anywhere close to around half of what it's worth brand new, I think I'll be pretty happy. I know that's asking a lot. I know that my budget's tight, but I think I can do it. Now, one of the biggest issues that we're running into with this motorcycle so far is just the fact that it's a 2024. In 2023, when Ducati created the Diavel V4, they redesigned their entire motorcycle. So everything down to the fuel lines they use, the gas tank, the front suspension, electronics, the wiring harness, the headlight, the fairings, the handlebar stays, everything has changed from their previous models. What that means for me is that all of the parts that I thought I could take off of older models that were still in good shape and that I could use to rebuild this motorcycle are off the table. On top of that, because this motorcycle was created in 2023, the amount of people who have crashed them, thankfully, is very minimal. Unfortunately, for me, that means the used parts market is absolutely non-existent. So brand new Ducati parts, that's kind of it for me. Now, for all you people out there who are saying, boo-hoo, you bought a motorcycle, it's wrecked, it's gonna cost you lots of money, stop complaining. You're right, we're done complaining. And I'm excited. I'm excited about this motorcycle. I'm excited about the rebuild. Come what may, we're gonna get to it. And we've got a lot coming. First, we're gonna start by removing this headlight. There are two bolts that I can see, here and here. And with those out of the way, it should come off pretty easily. Luckily, everything looks to be intact. Nothing broken on this headlight, which is incredible. Not even these little heat fins here. They're all intact. Everything's good, no cracks. Just that scuff on the front. We'll get that fixed. Next up, we're gonna move to this handlebar stay up top. There's a number of pieces that need to come off here. This, I believe, is just plastic. Just a little plastic decorational piece. Taking that off, we have two 3/16 Allen bolts here. So we'll take those off and move forward. All right, one thing that I've noticed just looking at this, it looks like the bottom part of these clamps are off. When the motorcycle got in the accident, obviously there's a break here in this piece itself, but they look not in line with this upper part here. And so that could be part of why the suspension had such a hard time coming out. I'm not sure. We'll see. All right, next, I think I'm gonna go for the handlebars and the front dash before I go for the triple trees. That looks like the easiest way to go about it. Again, I'm not a mechanic, so this is all kind of just playing it by ear, but I think that's where I'm gonna move to next. The handlebars and the front dash. We'll go from there. After a little investigating, I think I found the bolts that I need to take out next. Let me show you. So here at the top here, we have a couple of bolts seated for the front display, as well underneath the handlebars, we have a couple of bolts to take out the front handlebars themselves. I believe I'll be able to take out the handlebars with everything attached to them. So let's get to it. All right, so it looks like 3/16 Allen is the winner for all things Ducati. All right, so I just pulled this bolt out of the handlebar stay here, and I don't know if you can see it in camera, but this bolt here is warped for sure. Not good. Getting these handlebars out was much more of a hassle than I thought they would be. Way more elbow grease than I anticipated, and I'm not sure that it should have been. I truly can't tell. I think they're coming out. Okay. Don't break. One down. There it is. Two down. All right. Okay. At this point in the teardown, I decided to take the battery out. I was moving on to the electrical parts of the project, and I didn't want it to be affected by any live wires. All right, what I really want to do is I want to get everything off of the handlebar bracket here, or the handlebar stay. I really want to get this TFT dash out. It doesn't seem broken, and I don't want to break it. So that's next. I believe for this, there are only two bolts here up top holding it in, here and here, and then it can slide out. Let's go ahead and remove those first. All right, so it looks like there's a number of things holding the front screen on, which makes a lot of sense. A lot of wiring, some zip ties. So we have a number of things holding in. We have the main wiring here. We have a couple of small wires over on this side here with some zip ties. So all of that needs to be removed in order to pull this front dash out. It's always interesting to me to see how much of something is put together by electrical tape or zip ties or plastic bolts for that matter. You learn something new every single time you take something apart. So that comes out easy enough. Great, great, great. So Ducati calls them special screws. Oh, because that's why. They're just plastic screws, seems like. That's super frustrating. Still got a bunch of wires, and they're plastic screws that are 3/16 Allen. Good deal. There it is. All right, the TFT display is off. Did lose one of the washers. We'll find it soon enough as we continue taking apart the motorcycle. So not all is lost, but for now it is. Next thing I want to do is start taking off everything having to do with these handlebars here, just so we can get more and more out of the way as we continue forward, breaking down this front end of the motorcycle. Taking the handlebars apart was fairly self-explanatory. There were a couple of Allen bolts, a couple of Phillips head screws, and once those were all out, everything came apart very simply. All right, so interestingly, I got this first handlebar out and it doesn't seem to be warped at all. Everything seems to be in line, and that's just like eyeballing it, but everything seems to be where it should be. Now, there were definitely pieces on this handlebar that were warped. There were a couple screws holding the brake fluid reservoir in that were completely warped, but handlebar itself, it seems perfectly intact, which is good news. For the left side handlebar, it was just like the right. Rinse and repeat the steps and get it done quick. All right, to get the handlebar stay out of the way, there are 2 bolts coming up from underneath it. To get to those bolts, there are a couple of like hanging brackets below here, plastic pieces that need to come out first. So that's what we're gonna tackle next. Each bracket has 3 bolts to it. We have 1 here in the front and 2 in the back. 1 and 2. All right, so we're running into one of our first issues here with the front end, just taking it all apart. This bolt here is supposed to come out, but it is hitting the top of the centerpiece here. I'm a little concerned that we're warped in some way, and so that's no good. All right, so we were able to get all the bolts out there. Now there are 2 main bolts underneath this upper triple tree that is holding up the main handlebar stays. So those are coming out next. All right, we got the handlebar stay out, and this thing is definitely warped. Warped bad. It's a little bit interesting that this warped. I'm really curious to see how and what else was affected by this. Here's 2 more things coming off the front. How I wish that was the case. Here you can see me moving everything out of the way, getting it ready to remove that upper triple tree, removing wires, getting things out of the way so we can get to the upper bolt. Next to come out is the triple trees. To get them out, I have to remove the steering tube plug, which needs a special tool. The tool looks like this. The tool then slips inside the plug, just like that. Alright, so in that last video, we had some issues. And this is what happens when you don't know what you're doing taking apart a motorcycle. I did have a very nice gentleman send me the owner's manual and the service manual, and through that I found a bolt that should have been removed before removing the stopper nut, which I didn't do, and that's a bummer. Now, in trying to remove the upper triple tree without removing that bolt or loosening that bolt, I ended up warping my tool pretty bad. So I don't know if you can see this or not. So those are pretty mangled. I'm gonna try my best to get these straight so it's usable. If not, we may have to order a new tool. But until then, I'm gonna go ahead and loosen that bolt up and try to move forward from there. All right, with that loosened up, hopefully that stopper should be loose and be able to come out fairly easily. That bolt didn't seem too tight, which has me worried. We'll see what happens. Literally, I was pushing and turning with all of my strength. Read the instructions, people. All right, now that the triple tree is off, we can see a couple things. One, taking these off, you have a few pieces that are sitting inside of the frame neck here. On the top, you have 3 different parts. You have the bearings, jacket, and what looks like a washer that sits on top and makes everything nice and compact. On the bottom triple tree here, you have the same thing. It's very greasy right now. You have another set of bearings that sits right in here. When you insert the bottom, these bearings sit up against the inside of this tube here, and again, allow things to move really freely. All right, we got some good news, we got some bad news, and some great news. In taking apart everything for the front suspension, we found out a couple things. The triple trees themselves, they look like they're pretty okay. I don't see any sign of warpage here. If you put them down on the ground, there's not any play in them. There doesn't seem to be any warpage this way either, at least for the top, which is great. For the bottom, if you put it down, there's a piece of plastic here that kind of makes it hard to tell, but if you tap it, there's not any real wiggle room. The stem here, again, I'm not sure if that's warped or not. That very well could be. Now, for the forks themselves, looking at them, they seem pretty okay. They seem pretty straight, but eyeballing it's not gonna do. What I went ahead and did was I grabbed my handy dandy big old giant square here, and what you can see is that everything looks really nice and straight. But what we can see is if you put the straight edge on the bottom half, that's nice and straight. If you put the straight edge at the top half, that's nice and straight. But when you put the two together, right in the middle, there's a little space. And then you put it on the other side, there's a space at the top here. So it looks like we have warped fork. But the great news, I was able to find somebody who I believe can fix these. So my hope is that I can work with this company to straighten everything out. I'm going to send them the entire front suspension, the triple trees, the forks themselves, as well as the wheel axle. That way they can have everything together, make sure it's up to spec all the way through, and then we should have a perfectly in line front suspension. And with that news, that's gonna be a wrap for today's episode. We've accomplished a lot, and I'm really excited for what's gonna happen next. Stick around, really excited that you're here. Smash that like button, subscribe if you can. Thanks so much. Let's rearrange it a little bit. So aesthetically, it looks pleasing. Okay. All right.